Hey there YouTube, I'm now at the testing phase in my build. As you can see, I've fitted all the motors with their mounts, and I've got a battery connected for power. So what I did initially was plug the motors into their correct ports. This had to be done so that they were the correct rotation, which involves swapping 3 wires, and that they were plugged into the correct port. So when you've built your copter and you've wired it in, there's some essential tests you need to do in order to make sure that it's not going to backflip when you try and take off for the first time. So what you need to do firstly is calibrate your radio on Mission Planner. So that would be an initial setup, if it'll let me do it, yeah, and then radio calibration. And you're going to want to have everything set up like so. So there's only one key thing I've always experienced, is that you have to flip the elevator on your radio. So if you look at pitch on Mission Planner, when I pull the stick down, the pitch goes up, and when I push the stick up, pitch goes down. Now always make sure that is how it is, because you might find your copter goes in the wrong direction. Again, that's just reversing some settings on the radio. Now the key test here is, once the copter's set up and you can arm the motors, it is to arm the motors, and you'll see they'll start spinning in just a second. Okay, then if you can, only have one motor connected. In my case, if you hold a motor, it stops spinning, and the ones that are spinning will remain so. So now I've got the back right motor spinning. Now when I push the stick forwards, it should speed up, which it does. And when I push the stick backwards, it should slow down, which it does. Now if I push the stick to the left, it should speed up. It does. If I push to the right, it should either slow down or not change. And then we go into slightly more advanced. Stick to the top left should speed it up considerably. Back right should slow it right down. And then the most important test is yaw. So this motor is spinning counterclockwise, which means it's going to be making a rotational effect on the frame of clockwise. So when this motor speeds up, the frame will want to turn clockwise. And what you need to test is the yaw control. So if I want to make the frame turn clockwise, I push the stick to the right, which as a result should make this motor speed up to try and force the frame to the right. And if I want the frame to turn left, this motor should slow down, and the counterparts would do the same. Now generally, you won't need to do this for every motor if you're fairly confident in your wiring, but if you're finding your copter behaves very poorly when you try and fly, it's most likely a motor issue. You've not plugged it into the correct port, because sometimes you might plug, say, this center arm into the back arm, and so it will behave correct in almost every way, except your copter won't fly very well. So I would suggest you do that for each individual motor. Just gives you a bit of confidence in your design and your build. So that's it as far as testing goes. What else can I talk about? So I've got my GPS connected. I'm using a fairly standard GPS. You'll notice it's got a blue flashing light. That indicates it's got a GPS lock, and on the APM it's got a solid blue light. That means GPS lock. If you're using a GPS without a compass built in, you'll need to make sure that your board's compass is being used. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. So on the board you see that there's those 2 little jumpers just there, those tiny little connectors. If I can get it to focus. Come on, you can do it. Tiny connectors just there, right in the center of the screen. Now if you connect those, the board will use its internal compass. And if you disconnect those, the board will use an external compass, such as that on this GPS compass combination. So that's another point to put across. Can't think of anything else at this point in time. So that'll be it for now. Thanks for watching. This is test flight 1. Here we go. Motor orientation seems correct. Yeah, slight problems, we'll see. Coming up on another test flight. So as you saw in the previous footage, the copter kept yawing. It turns out that the board I'd bought from White Spy Quads has a faulty gyroscope. So the yawing was because there was no gyroscope to tell it that it was yawing.
Which is a real pain considering they're supposed to test them all, evidently not. Anyway, I bought another board and paid for expensive express shipping anyway.
I'm now by some trees, as you can see, and some on my right. So the reason for that is that when you're testing something for flight, try and stay by obstacles so that if it does randomly go out of control, it's got a good chance of hitting something close to you rather than flying off into the distance. So here we go, fingers crossed. Test flight. And it's arming. Okay, we've armed. Let's angle the camera up a bit. Here we go. It appears to be functioning correctly now. We have stable flight. Some slight trimming issues needed because it's flying to the left a little bit, so I'm having to correct. But otherwise it's okay. In fact, it might just be updraft from the ground. But that seems to be quite successful. You just saw the successful test flight. Just one little thing I'd like to point out. It's the necessity for Loctite. So here we are. See that wobble? That's because the screws holding the motor on, the motor mount, are loose. And this is why I dislike buying motors with motor mounts and prop adapters. I prefer a motor that just has it all because less likelihood of failure.